the best pick in fantasy football this year is the 101 because you get Jamar Chase, and on the wrap, you're probably going to get two very good running backs with him. Now, the 101, I will say, I drafted from the 101 in the Flock League. Probably, I still like how I drafted, and I love that I have Jamar Chase. In the Flock League, it was a little bit different because only one person took Bowers and nobody took quarterbacks. But in your home leagues, in your casual leagues, you're going to have more of those elite running backs like Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, actually follow you at the 2-3 turn. And the reason that the 101 is actually great this year, really two reasons. Number one, Jamar Chase, I think, is a shoo-in to repeat as the wide receiver 1 and one of the best players in fantasy football. And number two, the 2-3 turn compared to last year is much, much better. The second round of fantasy drafts is so much better. And so because of where the tier drop-offs are, usually you're getting running backs in that like second tier of guys at the 2-3 turn, and so you can pair those running backs with the 101 and Jamar Chase in a 12-team league. If you have your choice of picks in a 12-team league, the 101 is the way to go. Obviously, I drafted in the Flock League where it was a little bit tougher. I didn't get any value followers really, and still was able to make that pick work. 101, if you have your choice, is the best pick in fantasy football this year.
I think honestly, I mean, you're looking at tiers kind of here, and the 102 is right there in the same tier as the 101. I mean, generally the followers that are available at the 101 are the ones that are making it to you at the 102. You're just on the wrap in the third round getting whoever the guy at the 101 doesn't take. So again, this is a situation where you are going to have to toy with the idea of potentially taking Bowers if he does fall there to the late second. But if you're in more of a casual league, you are going to see Bowers usually go earlier than that, which is going to merit a lot of followers. Again, you saw Josh Jacobs fall all the way to the tail end of the second round in the Flock League, and that's something that, again, I think you're going to see kind of that tier of Bucky, Jacobs, JT, Kyron Williams, Hampton. You're going to have all those running backs pretty much available or one or multiple from that tier available at the tail end of the second round. So when you're talking about strategy specifically at the 102, I think really this is a situation where you honestly could go double running back if you wanted to. If you don't take CeeDee Lamb with the second overall pick and you decide to go with Bijan, it's not necessarily a bad move to go ahead and just lock down your second running back if Jacobs does fall there to the 211, and then you get your first wide receiver on the wrap like a JSN if he makes it to you at the 302. So Lab McConkey also in that range. If you end up taking a wide receiver there, Lab McConkey's your guy. So again, we care mostly about those top 3 rounds. Who are you locking down there? And then you kind of just fill the holes later in the draft and address team need. But the double running back strategy is solid as well as balanced within the first 4 rounds where you take 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers.
Just continuing with our theme here, we love the top of drafts this year. At the 3 spot, we particularly like the 3 spot because once, if CD goes, then you take one of Bijan or Gibbs and you get your choice. If one of the running backs goes, then you just take CD. And so your decision's actually pretty much made up for you here. How we have it, we probably just go ahead and take Bijan. But in this particular draft spot, you might actually end up going double running back. This is one of the only spots where if CD goes at the 2, you might end up starting your draft double running back. And the nice thing is the wide receivers in rounds 3 through 6 at this spot end up very good. In our example draft here in the algorithm, we have, again, double running back being one of the best strategies along with balance. You're doing one of the 2 this year, right? And so you take Jahmyr Gibbs and Bucky Irving in rounds 1 and 2, but then you follow it up with JSN in round 3. In round 4, you can go somebody like Devonta Smith. In round 5, you could go a number of guys there, but DK Metcalf is usually there. In round 6, you could go, any of the guys in round 6 from a receiver standpoint are very good. And so in our opinion, if you are going to start double running back this year, I think this is the spot to do it. And double running back is a great strategy. And, we advocate for a balanced approach normally. This is one of the only spots where we feel like you can actually get away with a double running back because of the wide receiver values that fall in the subsequent rounds. You could get, end up getting George Pickens around 6, who knows? And so because of that, I think the draft spot number 103 is our 3rd pick this year.
So the 106, we're going to jump from the 104 to the 106 here. We're going to talk about later why we're not as high on the 105. Honestly, I'll just tell you now, we like the 106 more this year because we don't like choosing between Saquon and Jefferson. We like picking whoever falls. And that's that's a situation where it's like, hey, if Saquon makes it to you at the 106, you can't let him fall any further. You just can't. And with Jefferson, it's like, yeah, he's got a hamstring issue right now. If I'm at the 105 picking, I don't want to have to, I don't want to lose sleep over who I selected over the next few months because I picked the wrong guy when really it's kind of a toss-up at that point. So generally, realistically, you're going to have those top 6 guys go within the first 6 picks. In the Flock League, CMC went at the 105. That's not very common. It's generally at the 105 and the 106. It is between Saquon and Justin Jefferson. So based on who you select there, I'm going to tell you, go ahead and select an elite opposite at another position in the second round. If you take Jefferson at the 106, if he's the one that ends up falling to you, you're probably going to want to take who's available between Jacobs, JT, Bucky, and Chase Brown there in the middle of the second. I will say there is one exception that we would make to that rule, and that is if London falls to you. If London falls to you and you have Jefferson and he makes it back to you in the middle of the second, London does, you can go ahead and take him there. So I would say this is one scenario where it's like, okay, double wide receiver, not necessarily a terrible idea. If you get the right faller, that's just not going to happen all the time. More often than not, we do see people pairing running backs, one of those nice, solid, available running backs in the second round with Justin Jefferson. For me, I was lucky enough to get J-Jeff at the 107 and get Henry on the wrap there. You're generally not going to see that start in the middle, in the middle picks, but the next tier, honestly, in our opinion, is just as solid and I think just as reliable with all those RB options. And then after that, again, we like your choice of running back or wide receiver in the third or fourth. If you take a running back in the third, go ahead and take a receiver in the fourth. If you take a receiver in the third, plan on taking a running back in the fourth, and then go for there. Generally in the middle of your drafts in a 12 team, we like waiting on tight end and quarterback until later.
Now, as you can see, we love the top end of drafts in 12 teams, especially because at the 104, the unfortunate thing about the 104 is you don't get your pick. You basically just get who falls to you from Bijan, Gibbs, CD, and Chase. Usually it's one of the running backs there. And so again, you can go double running back in this spot as well as in the 3 spot, but you don't really have a choice a lot of times. The nice thing is on the wrap, you may get a little better of a guy. A lot of times you're getting AJ Brown here in this spot, which would be a nice balance start if you get AJ Brown to fall to you in the second round. But Josh Jacobs and Bucky Irving are typically still available in most formats here. And then you can follow it up, if you go balanced here, you can follow it up with somebody like JSN in the 3rd round, Terry McLaurin in the 4th round. You can go to the 5th round and get somebody like DJ Moore in the 6th round and get somebody like Jordan Addison 7th round. You can add another running back. And so again, we like the top end of drafts because of the guys you get, but at the 104, our favorite strategies, again, are double running back and balance, similar to the 103. I think this is one of the only spots you can pull off both of those strategies. And if you're curious, Nathan and I are literally looking at our algorithm while we're doing this video, because in our algorithm, we have your draft spot for your platform, the best plan, the best targets by round, example drafts, what your strategy should be, and we have a full player database for you. It is the most comprehensive algorithm/draft guide that we could have given you. And so you can get that at the link in the pinned comment with the season pass with code DOMAIN. If you sign up for the season pass, you get our algorithm, 3 other draft guides, you get all the rankings for fantasy football, all the tools over on the site for the entire season, and it's $30. So check it out. It's the best deal in fantasy football, and you'll get everything we're talking about in the video, literally a personalized plan to dominate your fantasy football drafts. Plus, if you want us to look at your fantasy football team, we also have the whiteboard available to you now. The whiteboard is our version of a redraft team review where we'll basically take everything that we use in the algorithm, the 4 factors and everything, and we'll give them to you for your fantasy football team and show you how we grade your fantasy football team based on all of our new principles. You can check that out. I've got the link for both of those in the pinned comment. But let's talk about the next pick here. We actually move away here.
From the early and middle to the end.
Yep.
So I'm actually going to talk about, if you don't mind, all 3 of these picks at the same time, because I think they all kind of work together in that you're working really with the same tier. And strategically, there is a reason that we prefer the 111 versus the 110 versus the 112, which is the order that we have them in. The reason we prefer the 111, first of all, let me just establish what this big tier of 6 guys is. It's BTJ, it's Ashton Genty, it's CMC, it's Nico, it's Derrick Henry, and it's Devon Achane. All right, so that really is going to be the range of the guys that we're playing with here. And the reason we like the 111 as opposed to the 110 is that you aren't one of the first 2 that start that tier where you basically have to be the guy that selects the first wide range of outcome options that are on the board. You just let the first 2 guys at the 109 and the 110 take who they want to take, and then whoever falls to you, you might be lucky enough to get Puka Nacua to fall to you at the 111. You might be lucky enough to get Amon-Ra St. Brown fall to you at the 111. We have seen that sometimes. Sometimes some of the best value fallers are the ones that are available specifically at the 111. So again, you're not like that far removed from the tier above where you can't get like a crazy value faller. And again, if you're at the 109 or 110, it's like, you're not like the value faller there is pretty marginal at that price tag, and you're starting the next tier. The other nice thing about the 11th pick is who you get on the wrap, right? The one risk about the 110, which I'm going to talk about simultaneously here, is that on the wrap, whoever you select at the 110, which you're calling your shot, again, within this tier, you have to take pretty much whoever's remaining there on at the beginning of the second in that tier. So the risk with that is you might not necessarily control what your build is. If you really don't want to start double wide receiver, you might have to start double wide receiver if you take BTJ at the 110, because the guy that's available on the wrap might be another wide receiver, right? It might end up being Nico Collins or vice versa. If you take Ashton Jency at the 110, you might end up having to take Derrick Henry at the beginning of the second and not take a wide receiver shot until the late third, which, again, it gets pretty complicated there. And then the reason the 112 is going to be our last one of this grouping of three is you're essentially pinned. You're pinned by everyone. You're not going to get a value faller at the 112. And the one nice thing is you do have a say generally on what your strategy is going to be there. We don't generally see anyone drafting at the 112 not have their choice of going elite wide receiver, elite running back. But again, it kind of at that point is just not up to you. You're kind of taking the best value remaining, which again is going to be a value in that tier. And then you basically have to take the elite opposite, which is not necessarily good. They're just all at ADP picks, essentially. There's nothing exciting about the 112. And then, again, with all these picks kind of being where they're at right now, the 111, the 110, and the 112, the one interesting thing about them to note is that once you get to the 3-4 turn, you are kind of playing with potentially taking one of those rushing upside QBs, which again, strategically, a lot of times we don't like seeing an elite QB go up top on your team, but a lot of times we see teams that are just forced to take the rushing upside opportunity there at the quarterback position because you can't really let Lamar fall much further than where you're at the tail end of the third, beginning of the fourth. So what does that do to the rest of your build? It makes you really, really short at running back or really, really short in terms of depth at wide receiver, and that's pretty risky. Not to mention that ADP is just kind of it makes it muddier because Kittle and McBride are also often available there at the end of the third and the beginning of the fourth. So some of your best upside picks are the non-skill position picks, which again that more leans towards like a balanced or like even like a rainbow type of draft to begin your draft. And that's just really, really risky in the long run. You really have to hope that your rushing upside QB and your tight end are going to work out because you're not going to have the depth or the flexibility in your flex spots to have, a ton of star power at wide receiver or running back in the long run. So again, you just have to weigh that when you're at the tail end of the draft this year. And some people are totally cool with that. Some people are very comfortable with it, and that's okay. But that is going to be, I think, the main reason that we don't have these later picks, any of them really up top in terms of our priority selections, the best spots to draft this year.
All right, we have the 105. We do plug it in here after. It is still nice to have a top 6 pick, but the problem with the 105 is you're stuck deciding between Jefferson and Barkley, essentially, which isn't the best decision this year because it's pretty hard to make that decision. Barkley, it seems like the obvious pick, but he came off a year where he got a ton of work. Jefferson seems like an obvious pick, but he's got, kind of a hamstring issue, and so that decision kind of stinks. Not to mention, you find yourself later in drafts, I think, at the end of some tiers, like especially in the 4th round, you might find yourself outside of a tier there. In the 6th round, I think you might find yourself outside of a tier. But in this spot, we do like the balanced draft because we recommend you go Justin Jefferson. Then you can go one of those running backs we've already talked about, or you could, if you were ever going to go double wide receiver and hammer running back later, this would be the time to do it. You probably go Jefferson and A.J. Brown or London. We still don't recommend it. We recommend going Jefferson, then like JT, Bucky, Chase Brown, Josh Jacobs, one of those guys. And then in the 3rd round, you can get somebody like Marvin Harrison Jr. there potentially. In the 4th round, you're looking at a bunch of different guys. But there are good receivers and running backs. You could potentially get Alvin Kamara there. You could potentially get somebody like James Cook or Kenneth Walker there as well. And so you can have that balanced draft that we like at this spot. The problem is, again, in the 1st round, you're kind of at the end of the tier, but not totally at the end of the tier, but out of the top 4 tier guys, and then later in the draft, you're like, yeah, I'm in between tiers here. People at the 5 spots have had good drafts, I think. But you saw Sal in the Flock League. A lot of people didn't like Sal's draft, to be honest with you. And I think part of it was because he was picking at a really tough spot in terms of where the tier breaks are. 5's not our favorite. It's the one pick, it's the one pick inside of the top 6 that we actually are a little bit lower on. I'll take the 107 here real quick as well. The 107, we think it's a bad pick this year, but definitely not the worst pick. In fact, we find ourselves, because of the way our draft strategy lies, we find ourselves actually liking our drafts at the 107. Nathan famously picked Quinshon Judkins in the 5th round at the 107. I would not recommend doing that, but I would recommend,
if you get value followers in the early rounds, like it ends up actually ends up being one of the better picks. If Jefferson falls to you, and if one of Henry or London makes it to you on the wrap, then you have a really, really good start to your draft.
Yeah,
so,
and again, Nathan's start was dynamite.
I wouldn't change that at all. I know a lot of people hated my 3rd and 4th round picks. Marvin in the middle of the 3rd, and Garrett Wilson in the middle of the 4th.
Like, you think Garrett Wilson in the 4th is a bad pick?
I don't know what to tell you.
You are
that's crazy.
an egghead. I'm just saying that is a fantastic pick in my opinion. But with this particular draft strategy, you could go a couple different ways. Again, you're probably going to go balanced here, and you're probably going to go just, either if Jefferson falls, you take him. If Saquon goes, you take him, and then you take London or AJ Brown in the 2nd. Or if you take Malik Neighbors here, who we like, and we have him ranked highs, then you take one of the running backs to pair with him. That's our favorite strategy from the 7th spot. And really, at that point, it's just, again, you're kind of in the middle of tiers here, but you can get different guys in the 3rd round. And in some leagues, you have like Amari Hampton, Kyron Williams fall to you, depending on how sharp your league is. Alvin Kamara could get it to you in the 4th. Same thing with like Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall type stuff. DJ Moore, Jordan Addison in the 5th and 6th round. And so, realistically, the 7th is not our number 1 spot, but it's also not our last spot. It was his last spot in the Flock League when we were selecting our picks. I honestly don't think it's the worst spot here. So, and then the 8 and the 9 are kind of where we just don't want to be this year.
Yeah, so those are really where you don't get a chance at getting a value faller almost ever in the 1st round, and you don't really have a great shot of getting a value faller in the 2nd either. Here's again, very similar to the 112. They're just at ADP picks. And the difference between the 112 versus the 109 and the 108 is you're at ADP picks in 2 different tiers, whereas a 112 is all in the same tier, and it's like that in-between one. So with the 108 and the 109, technically or generally, you're looking at your choice of Neighbors or Puka Nacua or whoever falls. The reason we prefer the 109 over the 108 is because if on the off chance there is a value faller in the 2nd round, you're going to get it at the 109, be able to snipe the guy who is picking at the 108 on the wrap, right? But again, we have no issue with the picks in the 1st round here with whoever falls of Puka or Neighbors, and then ends up being like Amon-Ra St. Brown. We've seen people take Nico Collins at the 109, which we're just not like super high on. Honestly, obviously the upside is there. He's very productive when he's on the field, but there's just a lot of unknown in that range. This is the range where you also have to start flirting with the potential of selecting Christian McCaffrey. So this is honestly, the 109 and the 108 are really like all or nothing spots when you're talking about the top end of your drafts, which means you really have to nail the rest of your draft for you to feel really comfortable with it more often than not. And again, this is from our own personal experience as well. We drafted from these picks and a lot of our real money drafts on the channel. And just ultimately, a lot of them are just, we kind of feel iffy about them every single time. So just make sure that because of those picks end up being a little more risky in the first 2 rounds, make sure you're going with safer guys in the later rounds from rounds 3, 4, 5, 6. And even like I probably wouldn't go shoot for the moon until like round 6, 7, 8. You want to make sure your 3 picks after the first 2 are safe.
All right, and then let's do 10-team real quick for you 10-teamers out there. And 10-team does change the calculus of things quite a bit, but the top 3 picks remain unchanged. The 101, the 102, and the 103. And 10 teams are even better than they are in 12 teams, because when you're looking at the algorithm, you're looking at the ADP table, and you look at who you can actually get in the, not only, the 2-3 turn when in a 10 team is even better than it is in a 12 team, because you're actually safely in the tier there. And so, for example, you can start at the 1 with Chase, Jonathan Taylor, and Bucky Irving. That's stupid. That's dumb. At 2, you can start with Bijan, Josh Jacobs, and Josh Allen. That's stupid. Saquon Barkley, Drake London, and Ladd McConkey. Y'all, that's dumb. Even for a 10 team, having one of those top guys, and I probably should replace Saquon and just go with Gibbs. Saquon was the ADP guy. We prefer Gibbs. So Gibbs, London, Ladd, whatever. Gibbs, London, Chase Brown. I mean, dumb. Because that tier drop-off actually happens after those picks, these first 3 picks are even more valuable, but that tier drop-off shifts to the 3rd round now and makes the 4, 5, 6 a little bit less valuable, and you'll see that reflected in our rankings. But in a 10-team league, the first 3 picks are absolutely dynamite, and I would definitely take one of the top players there.
Yeah, and then 7, 8, 9, 10. That's basically the whole tail end of the draft. The reason we like this a lot more is because you're not exiting that tier as early as you are in a 12 team, right? You have a lot more flexibility there. When you're starting with Puka Nacua at the 107, You can get Ashton Genty on the wrap. You absolutely can. You can get one of those big tier guys that is often going at the wrap in 12 teams of Nico, CMC, Achane, BTJ, Ashton Genty, Derrick Henry even is also available there if you're really big into him this season. But again, if you want to go upside in the 7th with Puka Nacua, you can go safety later with potentially an Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you go with Malik Neighbors, you can, which is like crazy target volume, you can double down at wide receiver and get the crazy upside in BTJ, who doesn't require a ton of target volume to be hyper productive. If you take the wild, risky shot on CMC, you can pretty comfortably, pretty often end up getting Amon-Ra on the wrap. It's very possible, or the other way around. And again, if you want to just go all upside, Nico and Devon Achane are going to always be available there at the tail end as well. So that's not necessarily a guarantee like you saw in the Flock League where Nico, I think, went at like the 109. So this is one that I think this whole range on the tail end, if we were in a 10-team draft, this would be my place to draft, honestly. This would, I would, if I couldn't get one of those top picks and lock in chase, I would be running as fast as I could to the tail end so I could get all those guys on the wrap.
So the worst place to be in a 10-team draft, unfortunately, is the middle. Now, you can still have great drafts in the middle depending on how your draft falls, because if you're playing in casual leagues, you're going to have value fallers. You can just scoop them up anyway. But if the draft goes anywhere like you think it is, that tier drop-off happens in the 3rd round, and it gets ugly after that. Like, you are in the middle of a tier drop there. You find yourself in the middle of a tier in the 4th. You find yourself in the middle of a tier in the 5th, and so you're like, crap, I am not finding any value fallers. No good values here. And again, it's all league dependent, but right now we like the beginning a lot, the end okay, and then the middle really the least, which is pretty much how the 12 team was. It was just that middle is like 107, 108, 109.
The tier drop
just shifts. It just shifts
in the second round.
And so really we're focused on nailing our top 3, because after that, value fallers become more prevalent when you get in rounds 4, 5, and 6. They happen a lot more often. Yep. And so we don't like the middle. We like the beginning a lot, and we like the end okay in a 10 team. So hopefully this helps, and if you have your choice of draft selection, then, definitely choose the ones that we like the most. We've seen a lot of drafts and done a lot. We've done 10 real league fantasy drafts between the two of us. And if you don't have your pick, I hope you got a pick that we like. So do us a huge favor. If you enjoy the content, make sure you drop a like and make sure you subscribe if you play fantasy football. We appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you later.